This time on Low Boost, I asked Craig Lieberman some never-before-asked questions about Paul Walker, some of his favorite cars, and the Fast and the Furious franchise. Here we go.
Paul Walker really got into GTRs, obviously, after the movies, because I remember I saw Matt Farah did a tour of Paul's garage. And he had a lot of cars that people didn't really think that he would like because he didn't drive them in the movies. He had a lot of Mustangs. He had a lot of E36 BMWs. He had like 6 E36 M3 lightweights. But he took a liking to GTRs though. He did some stunt driving in the movies, right? The one scene where he slid up at the end of the bridge race in Too Fast, Too Furious, it looked like that was him driving.
It was him driving. He also was the guy who wrecked the parking meter. That wasn't in the script, but they left it in anyway.
Okay, I mean, it worked, right?
It worked. It was great. I mean, Sean Morris was largely responsible for that. When we did the first casting call at Universal back in the spring of 2000, I invited Sean up there. I wanted them to see GTRs because, I wasn't trying to, promote for myself to get my car in the movie. That didn't even cross my mind, actually. But I wanted GTRs. They were top of the food chain. So Sean brought out an R32 and an R33. Paul went over there and showed curiosity with the R32. Sean took him for a ride around the clock tower at Universal, where they did Back to the Future. So Sean was driving through that area, drift, four-wheel drift and all that stuff. Yeah. And there's a great picture of Sean standing talking to Paul Walker about GTRs. Unfortunately, we didn't have the budget to get 4, so that means they were going to be relegated to a very minor role. We were able to get 1 in, the yellow one for Leon, remember?
Yeah.
And that's the only way we can get it in is because that car only had a couple of appearances. It pulls up at Bob's Market, and they jump out. Then we see it driving with the F-150 with the parts. And then we see it again, I think it's at Race Wars briefly, but it's parked, it's static. And then, of course, we see Leon tell the street racers to go home. Street closed, pizza boy, find another way home.
Now, back then, me watching the movie, I'm like, why wasn't that the car? Like, that was whatever. But now looking at it now, you had 3 Honda Civics that you used for the heist scene. They were disposable. The Mitsubishi Eclipse at the time really was cheap. Like, you could go with that. But if you wanted, Hero 1, Hero 2, Stunt 1, Mick Rig, that would have cost you a fortune to do in terms of R33s at the time, right?
We had six or seven Civics. I'm looking for my VIN car list. 6 or 7 Supras. I mean, we had a lot of cars to do what we needed to do. I don't have it here handy with me, but essentially, for every 1 car that you build, you have to have at least three cars, a backup to the Hero, 2 stunt cars, depending on what's doing. In movies like Tokyo Drift, they had 10 Evos. They had, I think, was it 7 Mustangs or 10 Mustangs? I always forget because of the nature of the stunts.
Yeah.
You have to have a lot of extra cars.
Now, do you do a lot of this work still now? Like, what's your main gig now?
I do digital media. Run a company that does. We produce websites. We do SEO, pay-per-click, paid advertising, paid social. We do some video work, but I try and stay away from that because people think that making a video is easy, and so people say, "Oh, it's my brother's cousin, sister's mother has an iPhone and iMovie. They can make this video for $50. Great, go ahead, knock yourself out."
Listen, I'm a YouTuber myself. I'm sitting in a green screen that took me an hour to get the light just the way it is now. So. I listen. I know how that goes. That's cool. You're doing that now. Now, the other question I have is my wife and I took a trip to Universal for a work trip a couple years ago, and we went to Universal Studios in Florida, and I wanted to ride the Fast and Furious ride because, of course, who doesn't? Now, full disclaimer: the ride was terrible, but the best part about the ride was actually going through the garage because it looked like there were a lot of replica cars from the movies. Now, there was a Charger there too, 1970, and you couldn't get anywhere near it. Do you know if any of the cars at the Universal rides are actual movie cars?
Well, if you're talking about Fast and Furious 1 or Too Fast, Too Furious, yes, those are probably leftover movie cars. Okay. There are a few of those cars that are missing because we've been doing, if you see my videos, I've tried to find out all the information. Some of these cars change hands 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So it's very difficult to follow the trail. But we do know that like there's an orange Julius RX-7 sitting at Universal California. There's a GTR sitting at Universal in California. I think there's a Tej's NSX sitting somewhere, the gold one with the Louis Vuitton scheme sitting somewhere. So some of these cars still exist.
From what I remember, the Charger, the black Charger was there. I think Han's RX-7 from Tokyo Drift. The car that Paul drove in Furious 6 on the highway. I think it was a Ford Escort, blue.
The blue one, yeah.
That was there, and I don't remember. I don't think an orange Julius RX-7 was there, but there was a couple of other cars that were there. So I was intrigued on if that was a movie car or not.
Some of them are still in storage. You know, Dennis McCarthy, the guy who's running the picture car warehouse these days, some of these cars, you know, kind of rotate. Universal call them up and say, hey, we need some of these Fast and Furious cars from any of the movies. What do you got? Can you rotate these in and then take these others back? And so Universal's paying storage every month to Dennis McCarthy.
Oh, wow.
To store a lot of these cars, right? And then some of them, they hang on to them for a long time because they're going to be reused. I'll tell you a story. Fast and Furious 1 was done. I still worked for Universal consulting, doing stuff for their marketing department, their licensing department for product placements. I mean, product licensing, like the die-cast cars with, what's the name of that company? It'll come to me. So Racing Champions. You know, I went out, flew out there to oversee the build of the cars to get all the actors. So I was working for many different departments. That went on for months and months and months after the movie. Sound design, sound editing, all that kind of months. Just when we were all done, when I was about to get my last paycheck, my boss calls me up and said, hey, get ready. We're going to do another movie called Too Fast, Too Furious. And then they signed me again. I had toured with Paul. I'd gone to a bunch of events with Paul to promote the first movie, right? And that was all done. And so now they call me up and say, we need you to go up to the warehouse, which is a place called Newhall Glass in Saugus, California. And all the cars were stored there in this old factory. It looked like some like a plant where they used to make World War II shit, but that's not what it was. The cars were covered in a thick coat of dust. All the cars were sitting there. So they were going to take them out, clean them up and all that, and then ship them down to Florida or back to the picture car warehouse where we built the first cars for the first movie. And they wanted me to get parts to redesign the cars, to turn them into cars for Too Fast, Too Furious. And so the RX-7s that were used in Fast 1 got reused in Fast 2, the Supras, the Eclipses, all those cars got reused, including the Civics. So there was a lot of that. So that still goes on today. Some of these cars might be used as disposable cars in future movies, that kind of stuff. That's why they keep these cars for so long.
Now, you had an integral role in, you know, convincing the writers to change certain things in the movie to actually make it more authentic. And one of the things that you said, you know, from the script, that when Jesse popped the hood of the Supra, originally in the script, it was, wow, a Skyline motor. Now, something that egregious of it missing a Skyline motor from a Supra engine in a movie like that, to me, like that would... a lot of fans would get turned off from that. How did you actually, like, what was that conversation like when you were talking to the writers of the movies? Just, you know, hi, I'm Craig, you're doing this all wrong. Like, how did that conversation go?
Creighton Bellinger, who was one of the script writers, I don't think I've ever met Gary Scott Thompson or any of the other writers, but Creighton was my guy. I mean, Chris Morgan too. I think I spoke to Chris Morgan a few times. But essentially, I said when the first meeting, when I went in there, I said, look, it's clear that you guys have done a lot of research here, because they had car names already in the script, as I've said. And the video I just did rejected Fast and Furious cars. Yeah. Rejected cars in the Fast. I talk about that a little bit, but there's another video I did ages ago. Anyway, I said, you've done a lot of research here, but you got a few things backwards. You know, they wanted to start Paul on a 3000 GT and then go, or 3000 GT and then go into the Eclipse. Right. It was all backwards. You know, why would you go from this level car to that? But the Skyline motor. So I just said, look, if you do this, if you say a Skyline motor, there's nothing wrong with the 2JZ on the Supras. In fact, it's a preferred motor unless you're going to pull it out and pull a V8 in it, which was not a big thing back then. But 2JZ. The problem is that when they pulled in that wrecked car, and I saw that it had the naturally aspirated motor because the intake is completely different. I mean, any person,
anyone who knows. Yep.
And I kept getting the same answer from the executives. You know what? This is not really a car movie. Car people are not going to be watching it. You know, we're just trying to dumb this down essentially to like some 16-year-old kid who lives in Minot, North Dakota, who's not exposed to this world or these types of cars, is going to look at it and have it be convincing. That is our barometer. And so they were going to take some, you know, liberties and have some creative license to do what they wanted to do. But I have to give them credit. In most cases, they were very amenable to changing certain things in there. And there's things people don't know about this movie to this day. That whole Racer's Edge thing, that shop where they walk into, if you look around it, you've never seen a speed shop like that in your life for a reason, because that was a giant sponsor blowjob.
Oh, yeah.
It was all those companies that were giving us parts at cost or free. We needed to give them more placement. The whole idea of putting stickers on the side of the car was something I proposed to Universal right out of the gate. Look, we can't get these parts, you know, for free, but can we get them at this? You're going to give something back. And this is part of the culture right now. You need to put sponsor stickers on there.
You mean like the Toyo tires on the Eclipse?
All that stuff. As long as you get them to sign licensing paper, logo releases, will do it. And so there was a good part of my job for a month is getting all those contracts signed from these manufacturers to get it in. And you got to remember, the movie was called Redline at the time. Nobody knew what the hell Fast and Furious was. I had never heard those words in a sentence. And a lot of people were saying this thing's going straight to DVD, or straight to VHS back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously, like, I don't think anybody knew, you know, oh, we're going to make a movie and it's going to do okay. But I don't think they knew it was going to turn into like Star Wars, Disney, Marvel level style franchise of what it evolved into. Now, obviously, I remember you had the discussion with, for the second movie to not get the Dodge branding for the SRT4 and to try to get an Evo, and how that almost didn't happen. They eventually did obviously get that Dodge things later because, you know, still Chargers, Dom's driving all new Chargers and all this stuff. So they got that placement later. Even in Fast 5, the $1 million race was all Dodge Charger cop cars, right? But you weren't on for those movies. So what would you have done differently or tried to influence them to do differently in the later movies, which have now become hero heist superhero movies?
Well, honestly, I don't think there's a whole lot I would change, except for the fact that the cars now are transient. They're in and out of the movie. Before, in the early movies, you know, Paul would be with the car pretty much for the whole movie. He'd start off in one car and then end up with another car, right?
Yeah.
But now these cars are lucky to survive one scene. Okay, so that makes it a little bit less of a car fan's movie, insofar as if a person came into the movie to see this red Dodge Demon or this Koenigsegg Gera, whatever, and that thing is only in for one scene and it's 40 seconds on film, if that, it's a big letdown. But the other thing is, can you name another franchise that has this many cool cars? And I'm talking high-level cars. You know what's been in these movies in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Any other movie franchise that has taken cars of this caliber and blown them to shit? It's just... There's nobody else doing it.
To do it, you can blow up a Koenigsegg or a Lycan Hypersport. You can blow up 10 of those, and you got the budget to do it. I mean,
yeah. Well, they were using fiberglass.
What was the budget for the first movie? $2 million for cars?
And for everything, for all the mechanic salary, spare parts, transportation of the cars to and from, gas, oil, lubricants, mechanical issues, brake pads, whatever. $2 million.
What do you think it was for Fate of the Furious?
$7 million.
$7 million?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to be like 80. I guess a lot of it's CGI.
That movie's overall budget, I think, was $160 million or something like that. Okay. The car budget, which Fate of the Furious is which one? 7?
8.
8. No, I don't know what the budget was for that one. I don't know.
So 7 was $7 million?
Yeah, I think it was $7 million for 7.
Okay.
You've obviously seen, obviously you're saying transient cars. They've had a ton of them, especially the later movies, like you said, driving a car for half a scene, not even, then gets wrecked or whatever. But what were and are, Paul Walker and Vin Diesel's favorite cars that they were in the movies?
I think I'd have to think about Vin Diesel. I've had very limited conversation with that guy, and it was way back in the first movie, only nothing since. I think I read something about he did like Dodges. I think he bought one of the cars, or somebody gave them one of the cars to come up and go home with him. So I think he was a big fan of the Dodge stuff. Paul, of course, that's pretty much well documented. He was a big fan of a lot of cars, E36 lightweights, Mustangs of various generations, including Fox bodies. Of course, GTRs. When I met him, he had a 66 Chevy 2. I think it was a small block V8. I have to remember, it looked like it had billet wheels on it. So he was a V8 guy back then. But, a lot of people don't know about Paul that, he was into surfing, guns, and cars. So he had a very wide range of tastes. And I didn't know about all of his cars. I probably didn't know about half of them, but he was just a car person. He's one of those guys you walk around with at the car show with cars and coffee. And, they don't just go over to the hot rods, and they don't just go over to the Mustangs. They walk the whole show and they look at the cars, and something that catches their eye because of its uniqueness, its history, its legacy, its craftsmanship, anything like that, the passion. And that's one of the things that, kind of separates Paul from the rest of the cast. There's a few other people who do that. Ludacris is a car fan. Sung is a car fan. I'm actually doing a podcast with Sung on Thursday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I went up and saw him a couple of months ago. He's kind enough to invite me up to his shop. And we talked about some stuff. Very cool guy. He's one of us,
He was on Smoking Tire not too long ago. He's got a really nice 240. Really nice 240. So yeah, that's definitely you're right. He's a car guy as well.
If you enjoyed this clip of the Boost Cut podcast, consider subscribing. I have another video that I did with Craig Lieberman that I asked some different questions on, and I also have an episode coming up next week that's going to ask Craig even more questions about the Fast and the Furious franchise. So if you guys are watching right now and you liked it, consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.